Welcome to the only King's Gambit guide that you'll ever need. First off, how to actually reach this opening comes after you play pawn to e4, black responds pawn to e5, very common, and now f4 here. But what is the actual idea of playing pawn to f4? You put pressure on them right away, a lot of people are going to accept the gambit, and if they do, you're not in a rush to actually capture back. You'll play knight to f3 here, get your pieces out, and in the time black tries scrambling to keep their pawn defended, you'll simply castle, get all of your pieces out, and you have an aggressive game. The big flaw here is that black can play a lot of different stuff, so I'll take a look at the more important things first. G5 here is the classical variation, black's most common and best option, and if they play this, the idea is they are defending f4 and also trying to push up to g4 to attack our knight, which can get very bad. So h4 is what we're going to play here. Attack them right away and say, hey, make a decision, of which only g4 is really a good move for them. Nothing else really cuts it. If they try capturing us, then d4, this is horrible. This pawn's falling, their position sucks, and they are crying. And if they try to defend f6, which is only played occasionally, then knight takes on g5. Beautiful sacrifice, and you are winning here, because after takes, queen comes into h5 with this check, king e7, only move, and now queen takes g5. And their king is basically never going to escape the attack. If king f7, then that is a free queen, job well done. If knight f6, this is their only line to try and survive, at which point e5 here, they're losing the knight and they're still miserable. Most people, however, drop the king back to e8, at which point queen goes back to h5 check, king e7, and queen e5 check. And now we have lured them into this fork. The rook is lost, but even worse, after bishop c4 check, checkmate is probably going to be forced. After king g6 here, h5 check, this is mate in 3. So you can already see how incredibly dangerous this is getting. But like I said, back here, g4 is their only move that does not really lose immediately, at which point you'll play knight e5. This is the Kieseretsky Gambit. You are attacking their g4 pawn, at which point, yeah, they're up a pawn, but it's f4 and g4, neither of which are very well protected. Also, you put pressure on f7 as well, which is also good, and black here has a couple of options. h5, the long whip defense, is one of their weaker ones, because although they do keep the extra pawn, bishop c4, and who is defending f7? Not really anybody here. They have two moves, knight h6 and rook h7. Rook h7 is worse. You can simply play d4 here. For the price of one pawn, well, I mean, f4 is likely going to be captured back, but for the price of one pawn still, you have a gigantic center, two pieces developed, and the rook looks really stupid. If they try this to even attempt to defend, then here, very simple, just knight c3, just keep on developing, and after d6, attacking knight drops back to c3, or sorry, d3 here. Nobody is actually going to be defending f4 in just a moment, and after like knight c6, knight captures, you're not even down any material, you are completely dominating in that position. And also one extra note, if they try the immediate d6, you can back up to d3, but what is even better is knight takes f7. And after the trade happens, you capture an f4, material is even, but their king is really stupid in the center, and you still have great pawns, easy castling game, and yeah, everything is just headed your way. So rook h7 kind of sucks, knight h6 defending like this is their best try, but from here, d4 once again. Now this pawn is really difficult to defend. d6 here is likely their best try. We'll back the knight up to d3, just once again attack the pawn, and black's best move here is f3, which we'll take a look at in just a moment. They have two other tries. Bishop g7 here is very common, but very bad. If they play this, then although the pawn is attacked, you have the nice knight takes f4, so now the queen sees the defense. I mean, yeah, you're doing fantastic there. Bishop e7 is a better try, attacking h4, which we cannot defend, but don't get scared, because after bishop takes f4, bishop takes h4 of check, g3, bishop backs up to f6, and now c3 here. And although yes, black is up a pawn, we don't really care because 1, h5 is incredibly weak, and 2, for the price of that 1 pawn, tons of easy development, big center, everything in our position is super safe. Our king, although is in center, is extremely safe. Everything is just going our way. But like I said, f3 is their best try, basically just saying that, yeah, I know I'm going to lose a pawn, so in return, I'll mess up your pawn structure. We're going to be forced to capture here. Capturing back right away is not good, because after queen takes here, letting our queen out into the open like this is just not that great. They can play one measly attacking move, but simply queen f2, everybody is defended, and your position is awesome. Bishop e7 here is their absolute best try from this line, at which point it's still not that great for them, because after bishop f4 and bishop takes with check, you have the ludicrous and extremely fun idea king d2. This looks crazy, but the idea of this is you're then going to play c3 and run your king to c2. And surprisingly, although this maneuver looks really stupid, everybody is defended. Your king is now safe, and you're still only down 1 pawn, while black has to deal with a positional wreck of a position. So that is that entire h5 line. Not that great. They have 2 other lines here before I'll take a look at the main line. The main line here, d6, is not actually the best move. The best move is knight f6, which is very challenging, but how to play here, you don't actually want to take on g4 right away. You want to play pawn up to d4 here. You are defending your knight in the center, and black can try a couple of things. If they try to take on e4 right away, which they are attacking, then after bishop takes f4, this is actually not great. And after d6 here, knight takes g4 now. This is not good. Their knight is kind of stuck in the center, and I'm actually doing quite well here. So their better try is the immediate d6. Now our knight is going to have to back up to d3, and after knight takes e4 here, this is like one of their best responses in the entire King's Gambit, so don't get discouraged if it does look a little bad. But here, you'll take an f4, you don't really have that bad of a position here still though, because after bishop g7 attacking, simply c3, defending everybody, nice pawn chain, let's say castles here, knight d2, attacking their knight, and after rook e8 here, black can try to get something, but it's not that scary. Knight takes, rook takes with check, simply bishop e2. And yeah, we're still down a pawn, but our position is extremely solid, while black still has to deal with some lackluster development, and after something like, g3 here, this is the engine's top choice, don't ask me why, simply king d2. We can go for that same idea. Our king is going to be able to run over, the bishop will come to f3, attack their measly and stupid looking rook in the center. Great position. And before we move on, I have one more thing for you, that being queen e7 here. Another sideline, this one is not that great. You'll then play d4, simply defend your knight in the center, and after d6, you have the following line. Knight takes g4, queen takes e4, queen e2, queen takes, bishop takes, defending our knight from their bishop, and after bishop g7 here, c3, the pawn in f4 is not surviving another day. After knight c6, bishop takes f4. Yeah, this is an endgame, which might not be your thing. However, we all have to deal with endgames, and this one is actually quite preferable because material is even, we can castle, and their pawn structure kind of sucks. So that is a good line for us, but their most common move is back here, d6, the immediate move to attack our knight. We're then going to take on g4, and they have a couple things they can try here once again. If they take on g4, this is not great. Simply queen takes back, knight f6, they can try to attack, but queen takes f4. Here, now we're the ones up a pawn, which is kind of funny, and after knight c6, we can simply pin their knight to their king here. Bishop g7, knight c3. We're doing great. Not much to talk about right there. h5 here is another try. Attacking our knight. The point here is after we back it up to f2, they can play bishop e7, and sadly, nobody is actually defending our h4 pawn. But here, we'll still have a good position. After d4, takes, bishop takes f4, bishop takes f2 with check, and king takes. And a theme you'll see in a lot of King's Gambit positions is that our king will be able to run around a lot in our little nook over here. 99% of the time, it's going to be completely safe for us. So that's just something to keep in mind. Don't get too scared. Their only good move here is Queen F6 to get this pin in, which can be a bit scary, but a simple Queen D2 here, defending the bishop, and after like Knight C6, C3, Bishop G4, our king can drop back to G1. We've kind of self-castled here, and we're actually doing quite well. Most people, for some reason, also long castle here, which is just a blunder, because Bishop G5 now, and they're getting skewered. Queen G6, we take the rook, we're up in exchange, which is great. Their better move here would be a quick queen drops back to G7, and to develop our last piece, we now play Knight A3, because can't go to here, so Knight A3. The knight will drop back this way, rook will come to the center, and yeah, we're doing quite well. Not much to talk about there. One more line before we move on to the last one. Bishop E7 immediately is one of their better tries to attack H4 and get it with a check. So here, after D4, captures, and knight drops back to F2. If they capture right away, then after king takes back, this is very similar to the other position. You can play it in basically the same way, but they have one of the line here, which is Bishop G3. Now the F4 pawn is actually defended, and their bishop is out of the line of fire, but you still have a good game here with Queen F3, and how you will proceed is actually quite simple. Queen F6 is really their only good move here to try and keep the defense of the pawn, and now Knight C3. If black does nothing, you're going to hop your knight into the center, and they're going to die. If they try C6 to prevent that, then they also die, because knight drops back to E2. And although our position looks a bit tight, it's honestly great, because now the knight defends the D4 pawn, attacks their bishop, attacks the pawn again, and everything's actually going our way. So their only move here is really queen takes on D4, at which point we'll play Knight B5. Attacking their queen, attacking C7, Queen C5 here, or Queen B6 is a must to defend the pawn, and after bishop takes, capture, probably just attacking our knight, just back up to C3. We're doing well. Not much to talk about. We can quickly develop our bishop, likely castle along. Our queen also potentially has a G3 and G7 rotation to try and trap the rook in the corner. Good position. And lastly, back here, their best move is knight to F6 to attack our knight and our pawn in the center, at which point you're going to go for the trade. Queen takes back, Knight C3 here. If they do nothing, we're going to go into the center, we're going to maul them, so C6 here to prevent that. And now Queen F3, put pressure on F4, Rook G8, and here we can back our queen up to F2. For two reasons: we are preparing for the inevitable Rook G3 in the far future, and also D4 is now possible here, like Bishop H6, D4, Bishop E6, black keeps developing. We can play the same move we saw a second ago, knight drops back to E2, to attack this guy even more, and here we get a more or less normal position. Knight D7, knight takes, long castle, bishop D3, queen drops back to G7, and here simply castles. This is good for us. Yeah, our position might still be a little awkward for the pawn on H4, but their bishop is on H6, which is equally stupid. We can quickly play like C3 here. We have a big center, which black really just cannot match, and yeah, you're doing very good here. Next, let's take a look at the Fischer Defense, which is the same position, but instead of G5, it's D6. The point of this move is that black is still going to go G5 and G4, but they are not doing it right away. They're playing D6 first. That way our knight cannot come to E5, preventing all of those Kieseritzky Gambit lines. How you'll play from here is you go D4, take the center, attack their pawn. Their only good move here is G5, which not everybody plays. More people actually play something else like Bishop G4, which is far, far worse. And after, you simply take an F4. I mean, this is terrible for them. Knight F6, we can play Knight C3, just defend. Bishop E7, probably Bishop D3 here. let's say, oh sorry, like black castles, we castles, well, I mean, we're doing great here. This is just a more standard position where we have the leg up. A lot of people also try something else like knight f6 to attack right away. Simply knight c3. Just make sure you don't take an f4 if e4 is attacked. I mean, yeah, you're also doing very well there. g5 is their only really serious move, and here it's a very similar position. You're going to go h4, attack the pawn. Once again, g4 is their only good move, and after knight drops back to g1, because that is their that's really our only good square now that e5 is taken. Although this does look stupid, let's not forget f4 and g4 are not a good combo together here because they are incredibly weak. And black must work wonders to actually defend everybody. They have two good moves here, queen f6 and bishop h6, both to try and defend f4. Bishop h6 is a little worse. If they play this, first you'll start with knight c3 here to just keep your knight in the center. Now queen f6 is kind of prevented because knight d5, and this is very annoying. So c6 to try and prevent that, but now knight g to e2. f4 is attacked, and that is a pretty big threat. Queen f6 is their only really good move to defend it, and now g3 here. Attacking them, they can try to push or to take. If they take, this is a little worse. You can take back on g3, and after captures and captures, this is more or less in a typical position, but it's still quite good because our bishop can come out, and let's not forget, all that black has here for the price of having extra pawn is their measly queen out, as well as a very messed up like pawn. Like, what's going on with their pawns over here? I still think you're doing great here, honestly. f3 is a little better for them, but after knight to f4, severing their queen from seeing anything over here, let's say knight e7, you have a fun move here, e5. With this move, you are sacking a pawn, but black's best move here is queen backs up to g7. But you can't always listen to the engine because although queen g7 is black's best move, literally 98% of people are going to capture. And if they do, you're already basically winning after knight e4, attacking their queen. Queen must back up to g7. Knight h5, attacking their queen. Queen must go to g6. You now have knight e to f6 check. King has to run over, and I mean, this is getting very bad for them. Pawn takes now with a discovered check. If king c7, then queen d6, I mean, they're already lost. Also, let's not forget various ideas of going bishop d3. Their queen has almost no safe squares. I mean, this is a complete domination of a position. But back here, instead of the immediate bishop h6, the immediate queen f6 is better, because after knight c3 here, same move, black can try knight e7 to defend the d5 square like this instead. This is their absolute best try. I'll take a look at this more in a second. c6 is the most common here, but it's not great. You now play knight g to e2, attacking the pawn once again. If bishop h6, then this is a direct transposition to the thing we saw a second ago. Instead, they can try f3 here, which you should know what to do against since this can be a bit scary. How you'll play is knight g3. Not actually capturing, because although they can give this check, after king e2, like I mentioned earlier, this is one of those positions where king can kind of just run around a little bit and nobody can actually attack him because the only thing black has out is a stupid queen. And after bishop h6, I'll run down how I usually go. Bishop h6, you capture, knight takes on h6, and the move you want to go here is queen d2 and then queen g5 to get some kind of queen trade like so. And here it comes with a check, so it is forced. They do have to be careful though. If they capture, then pawn takes back and their knight is trapped. So instead, queen g6 here, at which point now f2 is not defended, you can capture it. I mean, yeah, material is even, you're in more of an endgame now, but an endgame that much favors you, so it is still very good. I mean, yeah, not much to actually talk about. Back here, like I said, knight e7 is their better try instead of c6. And how you'll play from here, keep in mind this is their absolute best try once again, so it might look a little sketchy. Knight g to e2 to attack f4, bishop h6, the move you must play here is queen d2. Like this, and now their bishop is looking a little odd there. They cannot play f3 now because queen takes h6, that is a free bishop. So instead, knight b to c6. Although position looks tight, we're going to unravel it. We're first going to play knight b5 here. Attack c7. Let's not forget, c7 is very weak and black has no good way of actually defending it. King d8 is what everybody plays here. And now d5, attacking the knight. Knight drops to the center, and knight takes f4. And we're kind of starting to actually unravel our position. We are now captured this guy. If black does nothing, you can also play a very nice queen c3 to attack c7, which can actually go quite well for you. Your knight can potentially get some protection now. So here, instead, black's best move is g3. Pushing up, just making space for their pieces to eventually come into. The move you must play here, because if you do nothing, black will play knight g6, and this is going to end up getting you killed. So the move you must play here is h5, preventing that from ever happening. And after rook g8, something like, I don't know, a6 here, sorry, bishop b2, defending the pawn, a6, knight backs up. Although this is still a pretty strained position, you are doing well here. You also now have ideas potentially moving your rook over and getting something on their queen. And although your position is tight, so is black's. So all in all, it's more or less an equal position. Next, let's take a look at the modern defense with pawn up to d5 here. This move immediately counterattacks our center. What we're going to play is we're going to go ahead and capture them. A lot of people here capture with their queen, which is a big mistake. Capturing right away is not good because knight c3, their queen is attacked. They can give like one sorry check, but a simple bishop e2 for the price of one pawn, one very weak pawn, which we're probably going to win back in the future. We just have tons of development, and their queen looks really stupid. If they play bishop c5, by the way, which almost everybody does for some reason, you're borderline winning. d4 here. Bishop backs up to defend the pawn, castles, and knight f6 here is a killer mistake. And if you want to pause here, try to find a killer tactic, I recommend you do so. 3, 2, 1. The winning move here is a ridiculous bishop b5 check. They must block, and rook e1. And yeah, they're not surviving that. It is quite bad. Bishop d6 immediately is a little bit better, I guess, but after castles, knight e7, d4, you once again just have a much better position. Instead, knight f6 is better here to attack like this. You'll first play c4 here to defend your pawn, and after c6 here, do not get greedy. Do not capture, that will be horrible. You want to play d4 here, and after takes back, you take on f4. This is about an even position, and if I'm honest, this is one of the driest and most boring positions that you can get from the King's Gambit, but you can still have fun here. After this check, you can play knight c3, they'll probably castle, and you'll go bishop e2 here. Quick note, if they try knight e4 to attack your knight, a simple rook c1 to defend, and there's no trouble there, but pretty much everybody tries capturing on c4. Try to go for a little trick, because after we take back, it looks like we've kind of wasted a move, but this is all part of our plan. Black now feels comfortable and tries rook e8 check, which we've lured them into like a fish to a fish bait. We now play knight e5. We now have an extremely powerful knight in the center. f7 is attacked, which is a very big threat, so bishop e6 here is basically forced, and we have the incredible try, simply castles. And everything is defended. They can capture. We'll take back with our knight. This is still probably a more boring position, one of the most boring ones you can get from the King's Gambit, but you are still having fun here. Some probably bishop g5 action. Take advantage of the semi-open f-file. You're still doing good here. Back in the original King's Gambit position, let's take a look at the Falkbeer Countergambit, the modern defense's little cousin. If they play d5 here, you're going to take on d5. Quick note, if they take an f4, then after simple knight to f3, this is a direct transposition into the modern defense, so know the modern. However, if they play c6 here, this is the Nimzovich-Marshall Countergambit. This is like extremely powerful, but only in 4% of games do people know the correct move, queen e2 here. If you know this, you're golden. You attack on e5 with this pin against their king, and after pawn takes back, this is not what they wanted at all. You'll take on f5 here, sorry, not f5, you'll take on e5 with your f pawn, and after knight c6, knight f3, bishop g4, this pin really isn't that like important for them, or it's not that strong. You'll then play knight c3, keep on developing. For some reason, almost everybody here now tries a knight d4 to take advantage of this pin, but it just doesn't work, because after queen d3 here, you're getting this x-ray now against their d5 pawn, which they cannot do anything about. And after captures, pawn takes back. If they try to give this check, then, I mean, a simple king d1, their position is really not that much helped by that. If they just try to back the bishop up right away to like e6 to try and defend, then here, now, queen b5 check. And, I mean, this is good for you. Queen d7, you can give this trade. If they take with the bishop, then that's a free pawn, so king must take instead, at which point, a simple d4. This is just a good endgame. You're up a pawn, your center is very strong. I mean, yeah, you're doing well, not much to talk about. They can also try to immediately capture back here with queen takes on d5. Once again, this is a bad move, even worse than last time in the modern, because after knight c3 here and queen e6, this is just miserable. They can try to get this, but it just doesn't work out. After captures, queen takes with check, bishop e2, black can go, oh, bishop g4, I'm taking advantage of the pin. It doesn't work. d4, and they're now crying. If they take right away, then a simple knight takes back. I mean, we're doing good. Their queen is attacked, they're likely going to back it up to e6, and here we can attack it again, queen e5, and then queen goes up to d3 here. Probably bishop e3, knight f3. I mean, yeah, our position is fun, it's great to play, and black is just kind of sad there. e4 is very common here. Instead of capturing or anything and just saying, well, this guy is very weak and the pawn e4 is quite annoying, kind of like a Albin Countergambit, what you'll play here is d3. Just immediately go ahead, attack them, get that pawn out of here because it is a thorn in our position. If they take on d5, once again, it proves to not be good. Knight c3 here, attacking the queen, bishop b4 pinning, bishop d2, this trade, and this is just a good position. g7 is now attacked, which can get very ugly. We'll probably take back on e4 very soon. Yeah, I mean, not much to talk about. We're doing very, very well there. They can also try to capture on d3 right away, which is not great. Simply queen takes back, defending the pawn. Knight f6, knight c3 here. We're doing great. And after, like, I don't know, bishop c5, you can go bishop d2, quickly, long castle. We're doing great. Also, quick trap back here. A lot of people go bishop b4, trying to pin, which queen b5, and they're dead. So that does not work at all. Instead, their best try here is knight to f6, defending their guy in the center, attacking the other guy in the center, and you'll take on e4, knight will take back, knight to f3, and I'll go for the line here. Bishop c5 looks scary going for this, but a simple queen e2, their knight is pinned, that is scary. And after castles here, giving up their knight because they have rook e8, simply knight e5. Hop your knight into the center, and at the very end of the day, you're going to be doing good here. f6, bishop d3, going for this, g6, preventing that, queen c4, bishop d6 now, just backing up, attacking our knight, which is still pinned, and after castles, captures, and knight c3, we're doing great here. We're still up a pawn. Their king is now very exposed and very weak with a lot of dark squared weaknesses, and yeah, we're doing great. Next, let's take a look at the declined King's Gambit with d6, not one of their stronger tries, very common but not great. The idea here is you can basically just play this like normal. I recommend to get less theory, just play knight f3 here. If they capture, then after d4, this is transposed into a Fischer Defense, and if they play d6 first, then I can almost guarantee you they're not going to know how to play here very well, which is going to be great for you. And if they instead play like knight c6 and don't try to capture right away, we're doing completely fine here. d4, striking in center is our best try, because after this big trade here, this is just good. Knight f6, knight c3, we have a big center, easy development. Our queen is fantastic in the center where nobody can really attack it. Bishop e3, long castles, we're doing great. And one more line back here, they can also try the immediate bishop g4, going for the pin. It does not prove to be very strong. Bishop c4, and here you have a great trap as well. After knight to f6, attacking e4, you can take on e5. Most people take back, and now you win with bishop takes on f7, proving why bishop g4 usually doesn't work. King captures back, and knight takes e5 with this fork. King e8, capture. You're now up 2 pawns. Black cannot castle. You can castle very well. Yeah, you're doing great here. Next, let's take a look at the classical defense with bishop c5 here. The point of this move is they are putting their bishop on all of this very weak diagonal that we have here. We cannot capture because then queen h4 check, and we're already completely lost, so that does not work. Instead, what you'll play is very simple, knight f3. Just keep on developing. Most people here will now play d6. If they capture, then this is bad because now d4. Their bishop is attacked, it has to back up. We can take, we have a big center, we won the pawn back, and yeah, we're super happy here, while black is in the corner crying because nobody loves them. Instead here, d6 is a better try, and you now play c3. Once again, going for d4. If they just play like knight c6 here and don't prevent it, we're gonna play it. D4, captures. If they give a check, then a very simple knight c3, we're doing great. And if they don't give a check, then once again knight c3. We keep developing. Yeah, everything is great there. Their best move is f5, but this only occurs in like 2% of games, so I'll just cover it real quick. You'll now play d4, counter attack their bishop. If they take an e4 to attack your knight, then after knight takes e5, sacrificing it, they will take it, and we now have the very nice queen to h5 check here, beautiful line. King walks over to f8, bishop c4 threatening checkmate, queen e7 preventing it, and now we win with pawn takes f5, pawn takes on e5, simply because their bishop is attacked, and if they just try to back it up, then rook f1, and checkmate is actually just straight up force. So that's something to keep in mind. Most people here will simply take on d4 though, at which point after captures back, one check, bishop d2 attacking this trade. Now this is defended, and yeah, once again, it's a pretty simple position. We're doing good here. So instead, back here, their best move is knight to f6, counterattacking on e4, at which point you'll play d4 here, capture. If they try to give a check and end up winning a pawn, it doesn't work because bishop d2, they must capture, and knight takes back, and that's defended. We're doing very well there. Bishop b6 is their best try, but here we still have a good game. Knight c3, they will castle, and we now have the very nice e5 here, attacking their knight, capture, pawn takes back, attacking their knight. They must move it to the center. If they try to pin us, then just bishop c4 will quickly castle, and this is just kind of a waste of a move. Knight d5 is a little better, and here after like bishop c4, bishop b6, defending their knight in the center, queen b3, adding more pressure, c6, and castles. Not much to talk about. It's a more basic position, but one that still favors us by a good amount. Now let's take a look at the Petrov Defense here with the immediate knight f6, counterattacking on e4. This try just isn't that great. You take on e5, knight will take back. Now knight to f3 here. Their knight just does not belong in the center in the King's Gambit. If they try bishop c5 here, then d4, and they're getting dominated. Bishop backs up, bishop d3. We're borderline winning here, which is just, already fantastic for us. d5 is their best try to, I guess, reinforce the knight in center, but then we have d3, knight drops back, d4 attacking their knight drops back again, and after bishop d3 here, bishop b7 castles, we just have an easy-going game. Not too much to talk about, not too many problems either. Yeah. Next, I have the Queen's Knight Defense after knight c6 here, defending the pawn in the center like so. We're going to play knight to f3 here, adding more pressure, and most people now go d6 and defend like so. Some people also try f5 here, the Miles defense, which while very rare, is actually very strong. What to do here? Simply play d3. Just keep your center very solid. If they capture, you'll just take back. That's good for you. So here, d6 is their best try. And after knight c3, knight f6, bishop e2, bishop e7, and castle of castles, this is more or less an even game with a lot of tension going on in the center. Remember, you don't really want to be the one to solve up the tension. Yeah. We're doing well there. Not too much to actually talk about. d6 is their most common move, which point you'll play d4. Strike in the center right away. And if you notice, this is actually a direct transposition to a line we saw in the declined with d6. And after captures here, you take back with your knight. This is just good. Takes, knight f6, knight c3. It's very similar, actually, sorry, the exact same. Bishop b7, bishop b3, castles, long castles. You're doing great here. Not really too much to talk about. They can try a little bit differently, I guess. Bishop g4 here is one line, I guess, trying to get this action in. But simply d5. They can give like one scary threat for about a quarter of a second. But simply bishop e3 here. And after captures, pawn takes back. Bishop backs up to d7, and this trade, a simple c4 here. And at the end of the day, if they ever give this check, you can just back up. You have a ginormous center, which black cannot possibly recreate or even get anything close to that. You're doing well here. Queen's Knight Defense is not very strong. A stronger try, however, is the Cunningham Defense with bishop e7. By playing this, they're going for h4, which we cannot really prevent. So what we're going to play here is the extremely fun Burton Gambit with bishop c4. They give the check, g3 here. Pawn captures, we castle, which is just ridiculous. Pawn takes, and now king h1. Here, we are down 3 pawns, but the engine only really gives a slight edge to black, because although we're down 3 pawns, a ginormous attack is about to befall them. They must be extremely careful. Their only good move here is d5. So many people play something like d6 or maybe knight f6 or something else, which almost always loses. And here you have the very nice bishop takes f7 check, king takes, and now knight g5. Double check, not even taking the bishop, and after king g6 here, knight drops into f7. This is looking pretty perilous. Engine is the engine. It says knight h6, sack the queen, and this is about equal. But if you're a human, then this position is almost completely lost for black. They can also try king e8, but this completely loses because this fork, they block, we capture. We're doing great here. Yeah, black is still up a little bit material, but queen will come here. Their position is positionally completely dead. So like I said, back here, d5 is their only really way to actually try and survive, at which point you'll take on d5, and now knight to f6 is their only move. If they try c6 here to attack their bishop, this doesn't work. You can take an f7, king takes, and knight takes an h4 with check, and they're probably going to die a brutal death here after knight f6. Yeah, they're not doing quite very well there. Knight f6 here is better, at which point you have the following line. knight takes h4, knight takes d5, pawn takes d5, queen takes h4, and here you have a couple of moves. The one I like the most is the odd looking queen e1 check. Going for this endgame, which I know King's Gambit is not really an endgame thing, but this is your best try here. Because after like king walks over and knight c3, one, you're down 2 pawns, but it's really only 1 pawn because this guy's not really surviving, and in return for that, you have a strong guy in the center, while black still has no development, which, even though it's an endgame, still really matters. And how you'll play here is after rook e8, you trade, and then you're going to play b3 and bishop a3 here, because this diagonal is very strong, and after captures, knight takes, king d7 here, trying to defend, you can now play either rook f1 to attack this guy, or maybe rook e1 to try and get your rook in. This is actually working out very well for you, even though this is still an endgame, also you'll eventually take back. This is actually still quite good for you. Next, I have the Schallop Defense with knight to f6 here, attacking our pawn on e4. Although the knight f6 on the second move is very bad, on the third move is actually a very legitimate variation, because after we play e4 here, if they play knight d5, they're just clowning around. After c4, knight drops back, and d4 here, we have a massive center. It's kind of like an Alekhine. We'll probably take back an f4. We're doing great. Their best move here is knight h5. Hence the idea of this maneuver. The point here is that now f4 is defended, and their knight is really hard to actually go ahead and kick out. So here we're going to play d4. Take a big center. If they try d5 here to just take a bunch of space in the center, then here this isn't that great for them. After c4, probably c6, you can trade and go for a quick bishop e2 and castles, and soon you're going to move your knight away. This guy is going to end up probably dying, at which point you'll win f4, and yeah, you're actually going to be doing quite well there. It's not a great try. If they try bishop e7 also right away to try and get in like this can be a bit scary, but you can play it in kind of burden gambit style with bishop e2, bishop h4, and g3. Point here is after captures, you take back. Bishop will take with a check. Yes, this looks insane, but bear with me, this is very strong. You'll now play king over to f1. If they do nothing, this is horrible for them. Their best try is knight f4, which is what pretty much everybody plays, trying to get their knight in and whatever, but here, simply rook g1, attacking their bishop. They must trade here, because, back here, they had to move their knight because it was attacked. So here, they try to trade, we take back, bishop h4, and a rook takes g7. Yes, we're still down 1 point of material. You're hearing that a lot in this video. However, this is very good for you, and it gives you quite a bit of advantage, because now their king side is dead, they have no development, our development is super easy, and we're doing fantastic there. Their best try is back here, d6, to try and chip away at us immediately, but you have the move queen e2. Going for this stuff, which can get very bad for them, if they try like bishop e7 here, then after takes, queen takes, we then have queen b5 check, and they blunder a knight. So, black always have to actually be quite careful here. Capturing back right away is their best try, at which point you're going to play queen takes on e5 with a check, and this, so queen e7 is forced, and after bishop e2 here, captures, knight takes back, attacking their knight, they'll back up, we can take an f4, and at the end of the day, we get an even material endgame, which is just good for us. Next, I have the Macleod Defense with knight to c6 here. It's not that great because of d4, and you just have the whole center. They can get a semi-decent position here if they know g5, which almost nobody here does, because if you're playing g5, you probably know something about the King's Gambit, but if you're playing knight c6, then you probably know nothing about the King's Gambit, so it just doesn't work together that well. If they do know this, then you'll play h4, g4, and knight e5, launching into the center, because after this trade, yeah, your pawns are doubled, but I mean, nobody is defending f4. You'll be able to capture it very soon with just a good position. Their other try here, which is more common and is decent, I guess, is d5. If they play this, then you're simply going to trade. Queen takes back, knight c3 attacking. They can play one check, simply bishop e2. There's really nothing here for them. Also, pawn d5 forking them is a quick threat, so they've moved their king or their queen away. We can simply castle. We're doing awesome here. Another pretty common but bad variation is bishop c5 here. It's very common, but it's just horrible because it walks right into d4. Their bishop will back up. We can now take an f4, just win the pawn back, and this is just like, I don't know, depressing for them. After d6, bishop c4, knight f6, knight b2. I mean, I don't really know what to say here. Development is extremely easy. Also, queen b3 to attack f7 with potential knight g5 is a good idea. I mean, yeah, really not too much to say here. It's just an incredibly weak option for them. Next, I have the move here, knight e7. This is a bit of a hard one to pronounce. The Bonsch-Osmolovsky Variation. It's hard to say. The point of knight e7 is actually to support d5. A lot of people think it's to move the knight over to g6 and defend like this, but that is really not the case here. You'll play d4 to attack the pawn. If they try knight g6, it's not going to work out very well. They're going to go h4 here. If they let you go h5, that's horrible, so they'll play h5 themselves. And after knight c3 here, bishop e7, trying to attack our pawn. We have a nice knight d5 here, and they're kind of suffering. After bishop takes bishop takes h4 with check, you can simply capture, knight takes back, and here, now bishop takes f4. This is horrible for them. Their knight sucks and is on the rim and is very grim, and I mean, everything here is just bad for them. Also, if they try to take an h4 for their knight, then bishop takes 4 right away. We're doing great. Instead here, their best try is d5, at which point you'll play knight c3, letting them capture because you'll take back with your knight. And after knight d5 here, once again, a lot of people try knight g6. It's not good. h4, h5, bishop c4 here. And I mean, yeah, we're just getting a ton of development. Bishop e7 is their only substantial try. But here you have knight f to g5 to attack f7, which is extremely awkward for them. They also cannot castle because then queen comes in and they're dying. I mean, this is really, really, really bad for them. So instead here, knight d5, best try, at which point you'll play bishop c4, bishop e7, knight c3 here is your best move, backing up and attacking them. If they trade, you can just take back. Your pawn structure is great, and after castles, you'll win the pawn back. I mean, you're doing very well there. Instead, bishop e6 is their best move here, and here you must play bishop takes d5, which looks odd, but the idea is after bishop takes back, you can now take on f4, and their bishop is surprisingly misplaced in the very center, and after castles, you're doing very well. And lastly, I have the Becker Defense, which comes after black goes h6 here. Just not a strong option. The point here is black is trying to go g5 and not have to waste about any other moves, but here we'll go d4, attack the pawn, g5 here, and we now have the very nice g3, which kind of messes with their whole position, attacking like this. If they push up to g4, simply we can launch our knight into the center, and this is quite bad for them. But the point here is that after they capture, and we capture back, it does look awkward. But the point here is to now have the open H file and a ton of tactics, of which I'll show you a very brutal one in just a moment. If they play like d6 here, if they play nothing, we can simply take on g5, take advantage of the pin here, and yeah, we just win a pawn. So bishop g7 to defend the rook is their best try. You'll now play bishop c4 here, and they have two lines here, both of which fall for the trap. The more common one is d6. If they play this, you take on g5 anyways. The point here is that after takes back, you go for this trade, and then queen h5. going for checkmate and going for their bishop, so queen f6 is their only move to defend both. And after, bishop takes on g5, queen g7, and a simple knight c3. Our idea here is we're going to end up long castling after like queen to h4 here. We're going to end up long castling to attack this guy. Even though we're still down a piece, also we can attack this guy as well. Their position is extremely weak, and they're likely not going to end up surviving here. And one more line, they can also try knight e7 here. And if they play this, you're going to do the same thing, albeit slightly differently, because after takes the same trade, and queen h5 once again, they can try knight g6 instead. And if they do this, then after bishop takes g5, they must go bishop f6 here, the only way to not lose their queen. And bishop takes f7 here. Great sacrifice. King takes, queen h7, and their king is basically dead in the center of the board. Well, not quite the center, but their normal home they normally stay in is completely destroyed. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Remember, members get to pick future opening videos. Shout out to Hashirama, my only current member. Please join them. You'll get to pick future opening videos. I mean, they solely picked this one, which is a great thing to have. Remember to like and subscribe and all that stuff. But thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great day, and I will see you next time.